Hi, this is Barry, and welcome to the next episode of Simplicity Zen podcast. Today, my guest is Robert Mutoku Scheafer. After a long career as a Zen practitioner, he's a recently ordained priest at No Rank Zendo in Portland, Oregon, where he's a disciple of Rinzan Pechovnik Osho. Thank you for being here today with us, Robert.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
Hopefully, I didn't mangle the names too much.
No.
Which I'm very known for. Could you so you were recently ordained as a priest there. That was actually April 8th, is that right?
Yeah, a couple of weeks ago. I'm freshly minted.
How does that feel?
Everybody asked me about that, and I'm still processing a lot of it. I'm very humbled by the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
I take the whole thing very, very seriously, and I'm not really. I don't know that I've put everything back together again after the event of that taking place. So,
yeah, when I got ordained, Jukai was kind of a big deal, and I thought because my Jukai and my full ordination was not too far apart, so I kind of expected it to be the same thing. But I was really almost overwhelmed with a sense of like joining a sense of an organization, essentially, a community that's almost 3,000 years old. Just that really hit me in a way I hadn't expected.
Me too.
And I really felt like a sense of pressure, and like, oh my God, this is real. I can't goof around anymore.
I totally understand that, and I feel that too.
Yeah, you're breaking up a teeny bit there, but oh well, we'll soldier through. Can you tell us a little bit about where you grew up and what your early childhood was?
Sure. Yeah, I grew up in a little part of Queens, New York, out on Long Island, called Middle Village.
Mm-hmm.
My family was a very strict Catholic, family. Go to church every Sunday. I was in Catholic grammar school and Catholic high school and the whole thing. And I was an altar boy and did the whole Catholic routine.
Were you a believer?
What's that?
Were you a believer as a kid?
I struggled with it. Mm-hmm. And my mother was a librarian, and she would encourage us to read. And I was known for going to the library and coming home with 10 books, and I would be just a voracious reader. And one day, I guess I must have been about 12, 13, 14, 13 probably. Mm-hmm. I brought home a book on fundamentals of yoga, it was called. And back then, this is like the late 60s, early 70s, there weren't that many yoga books around. And I read that, and it had exercises to do, and it was practical, experiential, and something instead of, believe this, believe that, this is like, look, here's a method for proving it to yourself. And I dove into those practices, and I would be burning incense in my room as a 14-year-old, and I'd be getting up before school at like 3:30, 4:30 in the morning and doing like 2 25-minute sits. And I was like, I was just like driven, and one morning I had a very, very intense, expansive experience that just blew me away. And
this is a young teenager.
I said, oh, yes. And I just, I said, this is it. This is what I want to do with my life. I don't know how it's going to happen or what I'm going to do, but this is what I want to do. And I would tell my parents I was playing handball out in the park, and I would take the subway into New York City. And I met up with a yoga teacher, very popular at the time, Swami Satchidananda. He had a very big following and a lot of celebrities, and he you'd meet the most amazing people. I'd walk into the Zen Center, and next to you in the kitchen is Peter Max. Then there'd be Lauren Nero. Carol King is giving classes. I mean, it was like a very different kind of thing, and it was great as a 15-year-old seeing all these people and engaging with them. And I wanted to become a yoga teacher at that point, and I took classes.
Yeah, going back to your experience that you had while meditating, could you describe that a little bit?
You know, I never meditated with the attitude of I'm going to get this, so I want this experience. I was just open, and this whatever happens, happens. And one morning, very unexpectedly, I just got this incredible sense of spaciousness, and there was almost seeing like the atomic flow of all the particles that are around me and surrounding me. Everything just became particulate matter. So that kind of threw me really it made such an impression on me. And I never forgot that moment. And the problem is, unfortunately, I spent many, many years grasping to go back there.
Yeah.
You know, you have an experience like that when you're young, and you say, geez, like, that's where I want to go. How do I, you know, so now you're grasping, you know, and you're trying to go back there instead of just purely sitting like you were before. So I spent a lot of years trying to recreate that, and of course, you know, without much guidance, it was you know, problematic. You know,
what kind of practice were you doing? Were you doing or
there was, you know, I was doing you know, a lot of basic yogic practice. There was a japa, you know, a japa, which is like a mantra repetition. There was pranayama, you know, doing the breathing exercises, you know, different things like that, focusing, you know. And then Swami Satchidananda was involved with this, like an interfaith center. He created this center for spiritual studies with a rabbi, a monk, and I was very interested in it. And he invited me to come up and meet this brother. He was a Benedictine monk, and his name was David Steindl-Rast. And he was told by his abbot to go and create relationships and bridges between Buddhist and Christian religions, and go out and build bridges, you know. And I was like, wow, that's pretty great. And so I was introduced to him, and he immediately took me under his wing, and he did the strangest thing. He said, what are you doing this summer? I said, I had no plans. He said, I'm going to send you out to a special place up in Gloucester, Massachusetts, and I want you to spend a couple months there. Tell me how you feel about, you know, spirit, because I was telling you I wanted to become a monk. And he sent me up to this place, this abandoned monastery on the coast of Gloucester, Massachusetts, right on the water. And it was taken over, and it was being used as a retreat house for people that were contemplating leaving their quarters. So I'm
on your way in and on your way out.
I'm this 17-year-old kid, and I'm surrounded by these adults that are like either just left the order and got married and now are contemplating, or priests or nuns or whatever, that were all like tossing after a life of this, whether they should stay or not. And it was like, and we were doing yoga, and it was like all kinds of stuff going on. And it was a fascinating place to put a teenager. And it really kind of, so after I came out of that, Brother David said, look, meet with me in New York. I'm going to give a talk at Fordham University Your Swami's going to be there, and I'd like to introduce you to someone else. So I said, okay. I go to Fordham that day, and on the dais is a Rabbi Gelderman, Edo Shimano Roshi, and Swami Satchidananda, and this brother David. So I'm looking at them all, and they're all talking. It was a whole long, like a day-long seminar.
Actually, can I interject there real quick? I'm so sorry. So I'm going to go back to where you said you wanted to be a monk. Did you want to be a Catholic monk or a Buddhist monk, or did you just not even think about it that deeply?
I was undecided, and I was weighing all the options.
But you felt a religious aspiration for sure.
Oh, like, beyond a doubt.
To be a cleric. Yeah.
Yes.
What do you think it went back to that experience that you had? But how did you articulate that experience? Did you think it was God? Did you think it was ultimate reality? Like, how did your 15-year-old mind, like through what lens did you experience that?
Well, during that period of time, I had become friends with Ram Dass.
Okay.
And I had met him, and I read the book, and the book just, he had a book called Remember, Be Here Now, and it just blew my brain open, and I never really recovered from that. And still to this day, and I stayed in contact with him all during his life. And that influence kind of gelled, that reading that and that perspective. And in the back of that book, he had like books to hang out with, like all these suggested books at the end of that book. And I started reading every one of them, whether it was the Bhagavad Gita, or if it was Milarepa, or everything, the Book of the Dead and everything. So so that all this was accumulating to this moment of coming and meeting these people. And I really hadn't decided which direction I was going to go. But this moment that I'm describing to you kind of like gelled it. Edo Shimano was there listening to other people talk. And there was one point where in his robe, he took out this little pocket in the robe, and he took out a handkerchief, and he unfolded it extremely mindfully. He blew his nose, he refolded it, and he put it back in his robe. But there was such an incredible, intense focus and presence that just radiated out of him. It just said, look, all these people are talking about doing this. This guy's doing it. And it hit me so deep in my heart. I immediately went up to him, and he was this 17-year-old coming up to him, and I told him I wanted to be a student. And he had a brand new center in Manhattan. This was like early 70s. And he was so amused. He thought, this kid from Queens wants to sit Zazen. So they'd have open nights at the Zendo, where you could go into this beautiful carriage house on 67th Street. And it was like, around 1970 or so. And you'd have, New York City was like this spiritual supermarket of everything from S to people dancing with Sufis to Meher Baba, to like everything was going on. And so you'd have the Zendo was packed on these open nights. But there'd be people that would be during Zazen, like 25 minutes into it, be keeling over. And it was a very, maybe some people were drugged or whatever. And, it was a really strange place at that time, and very intense. And for a 17-year-old walking in on that, and then Edo, he'd only been here a few years, so his English wasn't all that great. So you really had to pay attention to to him when he gave his taisho. And but I felt like when he was talking, like lightning bolts were shooting out of him. He was so incredibly, had such a powerful presence, somewhat scary, and but I was hooked, and I kept going to the point where I eventually had to leave to go to chef school. So I went on ahead to that. But
so you went. So you had the seminar. You went up to him and talked to him. Did you start going to his center right away, or
right away?
Yeah, and so you were part of the. You weren't living there, right? Or
no.
Yeah.
I was, my home where I was living in Queens was only, a 40-minute subway ride from there, so I could just pop right in. I was going to school at Hunter College at that point, so I could just, it was like a few blocks away.
And you, but then you went away to chef school.
Yeah.
And what, just because you wanted to, I mean, you weren't ready to be a full-time monk at that point. You wanted to have a career, or you felt pressured by your parents, or?
No. My parents were totally against me leaving college and going to chef school. My father yelled at me and said, "You're going to be peeling carrots the rest of your life."
Was he right?
So, oh my God, he wouldn't talk to me for 7 years after I made the decision to go to chef school.
Well, but was he right? Did you spend the rest of your life peeling carrots?
Well, with great joy, I peel those carrots, among other things.
Yeah.
It's my spiritual work, working with those carrots. So I savor every moment with those carrots.
Did you go into a career as a chef?
Yes, I did. I graduated chef school, and then my first job out of chef school, I ended up working at the Playboy Club in New Jersey for Hugh Hefner, and I was in charge of these massive kitchens, and it was a real awakening. And I had all these crazy bunnies giving me dinner orders, and it was really an awakening experience. Yes. And then a friend of mine contacted me while I was there and said that he was a former Jesuit priest, and he said to me, "I've found your teacher. You have to come and meet this guy." I said, that's kind of a bold statement, somebody to come to you with. And he says, "You really have to meet this man. Come and meet with him. He's only a few miles away from where you're working." So
and where was this? Where were you working? In New Jersey.
I was in North New Jersey, in Sussex, New Jersey. Yeah.
Okay.
So I went to, and it was an herb farm that was it was called the Rocky Mountain Herb Farm, Rocky Hollow Herb Farm, and there was this Italian man and his wife, and he had gold chains and a mustache, and he was from Coney Island, New York, and he had this incredible farm that had Arabian horses and peacocks and Pyrenees dogs and toucans, and I mean, you would not believe the farm they had created there. And there were about 30, 40 students, and it actually was a Gurdjieff school, under the pretext of being an herb farm. And I spent a number of years there, and then left for a little while, and then came back.
As a resident?
I was resident for many years, and went through a great deal there. I could talk for a few hours on that experience.
I have a few questions about it. So were you maintaining a career outside of the farm, or were you living there, working there, and being supported by them? Or did you have an outside?
No, I was both at the farm working on working on my own, and I was also married at that point. I had gotten married, so so I had a lot of things going on, and a baby on the way. So I've got 2 kids.
So what was that like compared to your Zen experience?
Well, I really maintained a lot of my Zen practices during that period, my meditations and the things I had learned. But Gurdjieff work is a whole episode in itself. All I can say is that it was an incredibly powerful experience, but the teacher had no bounds, and he was violating and taking advantage of a lot of students, and created a lot of problems for students, and especially female students. And I found that unacceptable, and I had to leave.
Was it pretty cultish, would you say?
Yes, very
like
much.
what was your relationship with him? Did you think he was this great enlightened being? And do you think you were
I didn't think he was any
overly
great enlightened
idealistic?
being. Was I?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I was. I think I was somewhat naive, and I think that I put a little bit too much trust in this man, and I think it really backfired, and it was really a traumatic experience.
It's very common when people greatly over idealize the teachers, and then when they feel like they see how human they actually are, maybe even worse. That's often very disillusioning to people. Did you feel that disillusionment?
Yeah, I did, and it really shook me to my roots. But I kind of picked myself up, and I wasn't going to be taken off my my direction necessarily. And there was a Buddhist. I had left that area. There was a Buddhist temple that had just opened in my neighborhood, and I started going there. It was more of a Tibetan tradition, and I became a teacher there eventually, and I opened my own satellite center. So I had about 30, 40. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. The connection is not great on my end. Sorry if I keep stopping over you. How long were you there before you were kind of promoted to teacher?
Oh, I would say probably about 3 years.
And what was that practice like?
It was, it's called the New Kadampa Tradition, and it's, the teacher is Kelsang Gyatso, and he's the one that had the big rift with the Dalai Lama and created all these temples and centers that are really, they're really at loggerheads, the two of them, and I really didn't like that. There's things with it's a Tibetan tradition. It's a lot of Vajrayana practices, a lot of tantric practices. There's things that I found that were really hard for me to reconcile. They lead you through meditation, so they're talking during your meditation. I find that I never really liked that, although I had to do it. There was a lot of pay to play. In other words, get this green Tara empowerment, get this, and it's a couple $100 here, a couple $100 there, and it was very monetized. I was bothered by that. Also, it's really guru yoga, and very focused again on a specific teacher. And I found that after just coming out of what I had come out with, I was wary of that as well. So I left there, and I ended up with another center very close by. It was a teacher. His name was Rick Kendo Hart, and he had spent 10 years with Jashu Sasaki Roshi over at Mt Baldy, and I started doing koan study with him there. But he was very old at that point, very sickly, and and it was a very strange situation there. I mean, I enjoyed the whole collection of Sasaki koans is very engaging, and I love them. But I'll give you an example. It was kind of an odd sangha. I mean, an Ansui would just decide, I'm not going to bow anymore. Just like I don't see the reason to bow anymore. Or next to the altar, you'd have maybe a Buddha on the altar. Well, 3 feet away from it was a 3 foot tall Yoda. Normally we'd have a Sunday service where people would chant, and working with the mokyo and doing the whole thing and the drum, and when the guy that would play the drum didn't show, they said, "Oh, well, we're not going to do chants today."
So it's very laid back.
It was. We used to call it the loosey goosey Zendo, because it was just like whatever. And people would come in late, and I just felt that it's not. And being an older man, Rick Hart was. In these politically correct days, was extremely politically incorrect, and I just had a really hard time. I loved him, and I think he was. I think he had gone through a lot with Sasaki. I think he had a very tumultuous relationship there over many years. At one point, he was beaten by Sasaki physically with the stick, to the point where it physically damaged him the rest of his life.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, and but I couldn't take it anymore. So a friend of mine and we moved, and we went to Zen Mountain Monastery.
Yeah. So before we go on there, going back to the Tibetan place, so you stayed there a couple of years, and there were things that bothered you. What was it you liked? Like what was appealing to you there? What kept you around for the years that you were there?
There was genuine loving sangha, very dedicated, very supportive of each other. It was a very beautiful bunch of people that were truly interested in Dharma, and they would, if there was, I swear to God, if there was a festival for this group in London or East Berlin or Australia, they would fly there and be part of it. They were very dedicated, very generous, went out of their way to help everybody, and I loved them. They were incredibly dedicated practitioners, but it just, with my Zen roots, I felt very uncomfortable, talking during meditations and charging what they were charging. It became somewhat of a money machine, and I just, I didn't like it. And then eventually, some of the teachers got into a scandal that totally. I keep running into these situations where there's scandals. I must be attracting them. I don't know why.
Well, maybe it's your fault. You have these perfectly pure teachers. You go there and you corrupt them, and then you go to the next one. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh, that's an interesting perspective. Yeah, I like
totally
that.
Kidding. No, obviously.
Well, wait till you hear the next one.
Yeah. Well, so so you did the Gurdjieff. Is that how you say it? Gurdjieff? I think that's one of those words I've only read and not pronounced before. Gurdjieff at the herb farm. And then you did the and then this Tibetan place, and then you did the Sasaki Roshi lineage. I'm curious to see what changes in yourself you were seeing. Like, even though these were very problematic areas, you still kept coming back. So something must have been transforming internally for you to be motivated to keep doing it. So I'd like to hear a little bit about your internal experiences and how they transformed.
Well, years. Yeah, that's great. When you are in a teaching situation with something that's as intellectual as Tibetan Buddhism, that they are very much into memorization like crazy and really knowing. And that really gave me some foundation and never had worked on before, and gave me a deeper understanding there. Working with, and also being a teacher and having to stand up and be there and help people and answer questions and being able to know what you can't answer. With Rick Hart, there was incredible power in the Sasaki koans that just woke me up inside and were electrified me. And I loved them. They revitalized my practice. I never felt so alive as doing those koans. It brought a whole new spiritual depth to my practice that I never had before. And I just loved it.
He came up with his own koans, isn't that right?
Yeah, I believe so. I mean, I'm getting them secondhand through, somebody had spent 10 years at Mt Baldy and now is, teaching them. I'm assuming that they were his vintage, yes. But they were very, they were wonderful. They really changed my life and my practice. And then I went on to Zen Mountain Monastery, and then I
did you move there as a resident?
I wanted to become no, I would just go up. There's a place in Brooklyn that you can go to. There's a Fire Lotus temple there, and there's also the Mountain Monastery up near Woodstock. And I would listen to podcasts by Daida Roshi, and I loved it. And I went up to meet him. But at that point, he only had a few months to live. So I wanted to do Jukai with him. And he passed away. So I asked his successor, Ryushin Marchaj. He had taken over as abbot at the monastery, and I'm familiar with the whole becoming a formal student, where you do introductory weekends. Sure, you do. You first go for a 3-day orientation weekend where you learn the workings of like how to sit and how to do the chants and how to work, what it's like to work in a silent environment, the oryoki, eating, all these different elements, and people just there to explore. And it's like a 3-day weekend, and you get to, talk at certain meal times where you can have questions and stuff like that. Is that you are asked to do a sesshin and get through a session. The next one is that you are put in front of a guardian council, which is like about 5 senior students, and they basically grill you and like, why do you want to be part of this? Like,
And this is just to be a casual drop-in occasionally teacher.
This is to be like a formal student.
Oh, to go through Jukai.
Yeah, well, not even Jukai. This is before Jukai. This is just to become a formal student. You get gray robes, but you're formally a student, and you have a one-to-one relationship with one of the teachers there. And then once you go through sesshin, then the next level is you do an all-day sit from like 5 a.m. to 5 p.m. up in a cottage up in the woods with a senior student that's watching you, that you're sitting straight through the day. You take a lunch break.
Type of thing.
What?
Tongario, is that what they call it?
Yep. And then you come down at 5 o'clock and you sit with the teacher that you've chosen. And he asks the senior student whether you did it or not. And she says, yes, you have tea. And then you formally ask the teacher to be your teacher. And then you get robes. And then you do this entering ceremony into the whole Sangha that evening, where you walk through and you become a formal student. That's not even, I haven't but that's that's what it's like.
You
And
broke up for me. Could you say that last sentence again?
sure. So that's just to become a formal student. That's that's not Jukai. Uh, so I asked Ryushin at that point, who was the abbot, to become my teacher. I had a very, very strong relationship. I just loved him deeply, and we just hit it off and connected. And we spent a couple of years going up to the monastery or meeting him in. But then he was thrown out.
Right. I want to get to that.
So
before we do, could you talk a little bit about the practice? Did they? So you'd already been working on koans. Did you start over on Mu? What was your practice there?
Yeah. Well, the way it works there is it's really pretty tough. A lot of times you go there and you're just told to, you're not given a koan initially, at least this is from my experience. You're just being told to focus on your breath and report back, kind of thing. That goes on for a long time. And then eventually, when they feel you're ready, and this is white plum lineage, so this is Maizumi Roshi, so it's a blend of Soto and Rinzai. So you're kind of dancing on both. So what happens is you're given Mu, but my experience there is like they won't even talk, the teacher won't even really respond to you for a couple of years. He'll ask you like, how long you been working on Mu? And you'll say like a year. And he says, oh, okay. And they kind of blow you off. And like 2 years into it, they say, oh, how long you been working? Oh, Mu, okay. And then let's say you pass Mu. Then before you get to the Fox, you've got 100 miscellaneous koans. So now you're going through all the miscellaneous one by one, and then you start going through, Mumonkan, etc., and the checking questions, and you're dealing with, Zen sand responses, and there's all kinds of stuff that ties into there.
And could you describe your experience passing Mu? Do you have any great opening, or was it more gradual?
I
had
hear
a little bit about
that. I worked on it to the point where I, the reference in being a hot iron ball in your throat. It became my 24-hour-a-day obsession, and I pushed and pushed. And Ryushin basically said, "You're so close. You're so close. You're on it." And there was one day where I just responded, and it broke open, and there's not even words.
And well said. So so you're married and had a kid through all this?
Well, my kids had grown up at that point. I was my first marriage had broken up as a result of that whole debacle at that herb farm. And I had remarried, and I have an incredible supportive wife that has endured all my meanderings, and I'd be lost without her. And then so that was all happening. And then after making this great relationship with Ryushin, he gets thrown out of Zen Mountain Monastery
for cheating on his wife. Is that right? Was one of the benefactors,
well,
I guess.
Cheating on his wife. He had found someone outside of the Sangha that he fell in love with, that lived in Tribeca, and he also was revealed that he was experimenting, and that he was using it to explore. He was a pediatrician and a psychiatrist.
I'm not sure if it's going to show up on the recording, but I'm sorry. There's a lot of lag. So he was experimenting with
ayahuasca. All right, and he was a psychiatrist that was really delving in to himself. The 2 violations didn't sit well with the monastery, and they sent him on his way. Now I had made this incredible connection with him that I wanted to continue. I was in the midst of my koan study, and I was going through the miscellaneous koans, etc. And I stayed with him. And we just worked privately on Zoom, week after week for years. But then I would meet the other students that were still with him, and they were not really Zen. A lot of them were not Zen practitioners as much as they were people that were into ayahuasca.
Were you continuing attending at Zen Mountain Monastery while working with them, or did you kind of sever your relationship with Zen Mountain Monastery?
I didn't sever the relationship, but my focus was on with Ryushin. That was going so well. But at one point he started going, he got involved with the Brooklyn Psychedelic Society, and he created a talk called Dharmahuasca. And that was it. I was just like, I don't want to be involved with this. I think there's so much danger, and I think there are so many people that will interpret this information incorrectly, and people will start thinking they're doing Zen and taking drugs. And I think it's and people have a lot of psychological problems that could come into play, or other medications, and God knows what kind of trouble you could get in with this. And I just felt it was just so wrong. So
what do you think his motive? I mean, I think Daido Lori, I think he had a really high standard for his students. So, I mean, I think for him to have become Daido Lori's heir and abbot, he must have had a pretty deep practice and a pretty clear.
Oh, very much so.
So I'm maybe I get to interview him someday, but I'm really curious what was his motivation for kind of drifting away from Zen and getting into the psychedelic so much. I mean, I wonder what he got out of that he wasn't getting into from Zen. It's always kind of been a mystery to me.
He has talked to me about it, and I don't want to. We've gone into depth about it, and he's been very open to me about it. But it's not something I would discuss openly. I had the same question, but they were answered. I got my answers. Excuse me, why he did it?
Were you satisfied with his answers?
I was satisfied that they were important to him. I felt it was unfortunate the way the whole thing rolled out, because his wife was extremely close to me that he had left, and it still is very close. So so it was very difficult.
What was his reaction when you told him you were going to move on?
We still have a great relationship. We love each other. I mean, he sent me an incredible, when I got Tokudo, he sent me a beautiful letter of his thoughts and feelings about the whole thing, and it brought me to tears. So it was very powerful. So we're still very close. He's, when he leaves an organization like that, the things I was asking for him for my own practice, I think he was hesitant because he didn't have like an organization around him anymore, and not really a Zen Sangha around him anymore. So he was kind of like a lone wolf now. And here I am saying, I want to keep going with my practice. And I was sensing a lot of hesitancy on his part of like committing to that.
Makes sense. So you left his discipleship. What was next for you?
So I after all this and all these sanghas and all this efforts and I can't tell you how many of these that I have sewn. And I still hadn't done Jukai. So I turned to Mato Moore up in Karinji. I said, Mato, could I come up? And I'm going to bring some friends. We're going to have a retreat. Would you give me Jukai? And he said, no problem. We went up. It was the week before the shutdown of COVID. So we were the last retreat to go up to Karinji before the whole COVID thing, and got Jukai on the last day of our week up there, and very grateful. He's got a wonderful. He's a great abbot up there, and he's very much into Shugendo and the whole, and creating a Shugendo center in America. He's very much into martial art aspect of Zen, and he has a very physically engaging Rinzai approach. It's great if you're like 20, 30 years old. I'm in my 60s, late 60s now, and it's too much for somebody, of my age. It's just, I just can't handle it physically. But
how's his energy in person?
Dynamic, clear, direct. Dokusan with him is a powerful experience, and he's doing a lot to promote. He's got the Rinzai Zen discussion group that he promotes, and he's putting out books, and he's doing everything he can to give some voice to Rinzai Zen.
Yeah.
And his group is growing and growing.
How do you hear about him? Through his books or through his internet presence on Facebook?
Both. Yeah. Both. And I'll reach out and contact somebody and say, hey, I love what you're doing. Can I talk to you? Kind of thing. So.
And so you got Jukai. The pandemic hit. Did you still work with him at a distance? What happened there?
He wasn't really interested. He's not interested in Dokusan via Zoom. He's just like big no. He doesn't want to know about it. So you have to understand, he's 40 minutes outside in farm country in Madison, Wisconsin, and it's out there, and it's expensive, to fly to Madison, to rent a car, to go up, to not use the car for the week, to, it's like a whole thing. And I was actively into my koan work, and I wanted to continue. So I was listening to Keisho's podcasts from Rinzan Osho, my current abbot, and at No Rank Zendo. And I loved everything he was doing. And I contacted him. We created a relationship. I asked him if I could study under him, if he could be my teacher. It's a little crazy because it's 2,600 miles away from where I live. But I try to attend every session. And I'm committed to be at every session. And I spent a year and a half doing what they call postulancy, of thinking about reviewing and questioning whether you really want to be a priest. And then 2 weeks ago, we went ahead and did it. In fact, Genjo was there, which you just recently talked to, and Genjo helped me put on my robes for the first time, which was a pretty incredible experience.
You in Rinzai, do you guys get a kesa, or do you just get the rakusu?
Oh no, you get the whole works. Yeah, kesa, the zagu, the whole, the fan, the beads.
Where'd you get yourself still sitting up there?
No, there's a woman that a very talented woman that makes it for our sangha and for Genjo's sangha, that makes them custom. So
cool. How did you find out about his podcast? Like, did you find him just searching Zen podcast, or did
Yeah,
someone
kind
recommend
of.
it? How
Yeah,
did you come across
initially,
him?
yeah. But I really like what I heard. See, I spent a lot of hours driving.
Mhm.
Uh, so what happens is I like to listen to podcasts while I'm driving. So
Mhm.
I really get to explore that,
Mhm.
which is another whole thing we haven't explored. The chef thing led to becoming a pickler eventually,
A
and
pickler.
a pickler, and I have a company called Divine Brine, and we make
Oh,
pickles.
I've heard of Divine Brian. That's interesting.
And we do like 5 green markets every weekend, and we make 2,000 pounds of pickles a week, and that tends to keep me busy. So I'm spending a lot of time in the truck.
So that's your career.
Yes.
Hmm. And so that, and being your own business owner, you gives you freedom to travel to sesshin and stuff like that.
Somewhat, somewhat. It's still a delicate dance.
Hmm.
You have to set up everything, and you have to kind of like move away from your baby. But I've learned to do it, and thanks to my extremely supportive wife and my great crew, we've pulled it off. So
Hmm. Great. Um, you know, a weird thing for me in getting ordained was because traditionally when you get ordained, you're leaving home. It's literally called, if you translate it, you're literally leaving home. And whereas I didn't, I still live at home, I still have a
right.
family, still have a job. In a lot of ways that's kind of a practice entry point right there. I'm curious to hear how about like what is ordained, like, so as a business owner and you have a family and a home, like what does getting ordained mean to you? Like, why get ordained? Like, what does it change? What does it mean?
Well, to me, it's a greater opportunity to serve. It's you're supporting the lineage by supporting the forms. It's got nothing to do with attainment. In fact, that's why my name Mutoku is no attainment.
Mhm.
Uh, it's really taking on serving more and more and more,
Mhm.
and that's the driving force for me. It's not so much leaving home; it's leaving the attachment to home, but
Mhm.
it's also leaving yourself to become totally dedicated to this lineage, and helping people uh, learn the forms, and you learn the forms,
Mhm.
and it's an ever increasing. I'm looking to increase my ability to help and
Mhm.
serve. That's what it means to me.
Do you do
So,
choco at home? Do you do service by yourself?
oh yeah, every day. That's something Ryushin initially started with me, and it's become just like I zoom in on the morning. It's a 3-hour differential
Mhm.
from New York, so like their 6 a.m. sit is my 9 a.m. sit, so it's like start of my business day, and then I sit also with them at 12. Their 12 o'clock, which is my 3 p.m. So I'm home. So
Mhm.
it's kind of like I'm living. Kind of part of me is leaving home, and that I'm living on Portland time. But yeah,
Mhm.
it's it's I love the sangha. There's many very dedicated people. They're very diverse as far as ethnically and age-wise. We have
Mhm.
people in their 20s, people in their 70s,
Mhm.
and a lot of very dedicated practitioners where they really have, you know, it's in their blood.
Mhm. Um, so you worked on the White Plum koan curriculum for a number of years. And presumably you got reasonably deep into it.
Yes.
And then now you've switched to Rinzai. Is just starting over as far as the koan curriculum goes?
Well, you know what? Yes. What happens often is that teachers don't care. You know, I could give them a list of 300 koans that I've gone through, and they say, well, that's fine. Here we go. This is how we do it.
Mm-hmm.
And they'll have this, in this aspect, they'll give you some preliminary koans just to see where you're at.
Mm-hmm.
Then they start you with Mumonkan, then you move up to like Blue Cliff, 5
Mm-hmm.
ranks, precepts eventually, and all that stuff.
This is the Rinzai you're talking about, or the
Well, yeah, what's coming down from Genjo, Maranello, to being followed through by Rinzan.
Mm-hmm.
They have a very clear order that they want things done in. And, if you've done them, they have all different checking questions, and it's a whole different approach. And it's great. I love it,
How would obviously you can't give away anything, but what do you mean by the approach is different? Like the nature in which the response is expected, or like?
Well, no. There's all different styles. After going through all these different lineages, you really get a sense there's a very different style.
Mm-hmm.
And some will use Zen sand, like Ryushin would say, hit Zen sand on this, come back to me, whereas that doesn't happen with this lineage so much at this point. Mm-hmm. So, it
Sorry,
depends on the teacher too.
You broke up again for me. Could you repeat that, please?
Yeah, it depends on the teacher. I found that everybody has a very distinct style, and I feel like I learn. You could do the same koan over and over, and there's something new that comes out, and a new perspective, and a new perspective on a particular koan that you never even thought of. And going over it again. So I don't mind, starting over again. It's doesn't bother me in the least.
Great. So, so you live out in New York still, right?
On Long Island, yeah.
Are you looking at starting a sitting group out there or anything?
No, what I'm really looking to do, what I'm hoping to do, is to sell the business, retire, and move to Portland, where I have a cousin that lives there and some family, and I love it there. I'm trying to sell my wife on it, and she's looking to get out of New York, so we're hoping to make that move, but it's really dependent on being able to sell a business.
Do you think that's probable?
It's, who knows? I make no. I'm open to anything. That's where my intention is.
Great. Before we wrap up here, is there anything you'd want to add, or anything else you want to talk about?
One thing I would like to talk about is people often ask, like, what's a good beginner book in Zen, or, what can I start reading, and all this stuff. And I would just, after all these years, you could get into a Zen Book Trap. And I think it's really important, if you really have a sincere interest in Zen, to hunt down, really, find somebody that is, has a valid lineage, and see if you connect with them, and sit on the cushion and create a daily practice. You could get lost in Zen books, and I think it's important. The books can come later. I think it's important to really sit, find a qualified teacher, and the teacher will take you along the way.
Great. Well, thank you so much for your time.
All right. I had a great time.
Hopefully, can have you back and talk about your next steps.
Hey, sounds great.
Thank you.